Hey there, it's me, Evan. Real quick disclaimer before we get into the video, I am not a professional in any of this by any means. This is supposed to be a story and not meant to be kind of like tips for you guys in order to work on yourself. I just graduated high school. I am not pretending to know anything on this really at all. So take everything that I say with a grain of salt. This is just me talking on my experiences to you guys as a story. So with that being said, sit back, relax, go grab some snacks, maybe some water, put me on your other monitor while you go do something else, because I have a story to tell. Right now, I'd like to call myself a rather passionate, driven, and decently humble enough guy who centers his main purpose and values around friendship. I really value companionship along with my friends, whereas about 2 years ago, I was goalless, purposeless, soulless. I spent all of my time indoors, and I did nothing but play games all day. I had really bad hair, I had really bad acne, I had really bad posture. I wore freaking cargo shorts and graphic tees all the time because I thought it looked fine. And this is only 2 years ago, and this was about as recent as a year and a half ago. So how did I go from that to where I currently am today? That is what this story is going to be about. I think the best way to tell the story is just as a chronological sense. So let me give you a brief summary as the type of person that I was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I was chronically depressed, always online, and never really participated in anything much. Whenever I got done with school, I would immediately leave. I wouldn't do anything. I didn't participate in extracurriculars. I didn't participate in sports. I didn't really have many friends. I wasn't really known by anybody. I didn't really talk unless I was spoken to, and I didn't really fit in. I was kind of socially outcast, if you will. So in order to escape that, I participated in different fan bases such as VR Chat, the Fortnite, Roblox. Not my proudest moments. I will be the first to admit it here and now. Those were not my best days. With VR Chat especially, that should really put it into perspective just how low this point of my life was. I was fantasizing on the daily, like there probably wasn't a single moment of the day where I was just where I wasn't wishing that I was just in a different world. I fell into so much, I don't even know what to call it. It was just escapism. That's what it was. It was escapism. I couldn't stand my life. I couldn't stand myself. So I would do everything in my power in order to try to escape it. And I would escape it with a bunch of things. Like I said, video games being the number one. That was around the time whenever I first started getting into anime, and it wasn't a healthy relationship. One of the first times that I started watching anime, I literally stayed in, binged an entire anime for 16 hours straight, and called it a day. That's not healthy. This was the point that I was starting at. And I was neglecting myself. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't shaving. I wasn't taking care of myself in any way. So, naturally, I started to get really upset about it, because nobody really enjoys whenever you become self-aware of what you're doing. And I was more than aware of what I was doing to myself. Day after day, I would sat there looking at my summer projects that still needed to be started as the deadlines grew closer and closer for the new school year starting, until eventually one day I cracked. And this day still stands out to me very, very vividly. July 13th, 2023. This was the day that I made a vow to myself that I need to change for the better, and that I will change for the better. And it was on this day, July 13th, 2023, that I started to turn my life around. Now, it started off as most people start off. Just a basic resolution of, I'm gonna do this, 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 and this, and I'm gonna start being this person, I'm gonna be so much better. And naturally, whenever you start doing that, you get a little bit of progress, you start going a little bit, and you think you're doing great, even though whenever you look back on it later, it's probably not the greatest. And I stayed pretty consistent. I started working out a little bit, I started going on runs. I could barely run a quarter of a mile before I got completely winded. My posture was still horrible, my acne was through the roof. I wasn't shaving still, and I just wasn't taking care of myself, and eventually I just ended up slipping back into the realm that I was previously in. I couldn't hold it. I couldn't stick with it. But that doesn't mean I gave up. I didn't. Because I have this strange tendency to not throw in the towel, even whenever I probably should, or even whenever most other people probably would. Because regardless of how many times I would commit to something and then stop doing it and then start it back up again, every single time that I failed, I didn't give up. And the way that I say failed with air quotes, because I view failing as like not succeeding and then refusing to get back up. However, I just kept on not succeeding and then like kind of falling into a little 2-week phase of not doing anything and then getting back up again and trying something different. And I kept on falling into this phase of doing nothing for a couple weeks and then coming back, trying something else, and then it wouldn't work, and then I would do it all again, and I would go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Did that so much. I did that for months. And eventually I just kind of fizzled out. The school year started and it was the same as before. I was still a social outcast and I wasn't doing much. However, I was trying to be a little bit more open. I tried to talk with more people. I tried to be a little bit more sociable. However, I was not participating in any extracurriculars. I wasn't doing anything. I was still not taking care of myself. But it was some improvement. I had taken the first baby steps in order to get to the point where I currently am. Another major reason as to why I was so socially outcast is because I don't exactly function well when it comes to emotions. Now, I don't know if it's some sort of mental disorder that I have. I don't know if it's some high-functioning autism. I don't know what I have. But I can't exactly I couldn't understand how people functioned or why people functioned. I didn't really understand those things. I didn't know how to hold a conversation. I didn't know anything, but I researched it. I was so committed to being able to socialize and being able to make connections with other people that I spent hours each and every day researching human psychology. I would come home, I would probably play a little bit of games, and then I would spend 1 to 2 hours going through a bunch of YouTube videos and articles, reading up, and trying to get my brain to the ability to where it can recognize human patterns and emotional patterns and social cues, and also figure out how to be a more likable person, how to hold a conversation, because I couldn't do that. So I researched it for a long time. But you can't do everything with research. However, I had this one friend in my 4th period, I believe, who I sat next to, and every day I would put what I learned into practice. And day after day after day, I would slowly get better at listening, better at signaling, better at understanding. Now, this is probably some form of masking that I'm too stupid to comprehend, but either way, I was getting better at socializing. And that is a big key thing, because having a social life is very, very critical to the human race. We are hardwired to be around people. Even if you're an introvert, you still need human interaction. At least I did. I am very much an introvert. If I go out into a public space for too long and everything is too loud and too stimulating, then I will get overstimulated and I need to take a little while to myself to recharge. That's why I have this little nook here in my room, because it's safe. It feels nice, close, and I feel calm and at peace. I am very much an introvert, but I still needed that human connection because I lacked it entirely. You cannot lack it entirely. At least I couldn't. On top of me starting to learn how to communicate better, I got sent to a dermatologist to get something worked on about my acne. And that's whenever I got put on Accutane. Now, if you don't know, Accutane is a very powerful drug that you take for 6 to 8 months that will completely dry out your face as well as your lips and basically re-alter the DNA of your face to make it to where you just get less acne, and half of people don't have to worry about it at all. I still worry about it a little bit, but it helped a lot, like a huge amount. And naturally, the acne did cause some kind of facial dysmorphia. I don't really know what to call it. It was self-deprecation. It was a lot of self-deprecation. I did not like the way my face looked, and I felt like the acne was a really major part of it. So this was the first step towards me taking a little bit more care of myself. At this point, I had started shaving more, I had started taking better care of myself, but my fashion was still really bad. I was wearing the same beat-up, smelly hoodie that I had been for the past 2 years, and I was just overall not in a great place still, but I was making progress. I was better than where I was in the summer of 2023. So now let's fast forward to the start of the second semester. Now, this is going rather fast, but you gotta realize that this is a very, very, very long process. There was a lot of self-battle and a lot of self-doubt and not really great feelings going on in here. However, I kept going because I was able to somehow recognize that I just need to keep going. And for whatever reason, I just didn't throw in the towel no matter how many times that I was faced with failure or discomfort or trials and tribulations. I just kept going. And I'm really glad that I did, because that's what led me here. So at the start of the second semester, there was a pretty major breakthrough that I had done for myself in terms of this personal growth. Now, all throughout high school, I had been making YouTube videos on my other channel that's been going for my entire high school career, but now I'm here, right? And on the Snapchat, good Lord, I can't talk. On Snapchat, we had a school story for our entire school, and I was looking at it one day, and I was like, man, these Snapchats suck. These aren't good at all. It was just people like posting car edits or just reposting stuff that they saw or just random stuff. Nothing was good. There was no actual meaningful things being posted there. So that's when one random day, I had the idea of changing that. So that's whenever I started for my school the 15-second talk show. Now, if you are from my school or a part of a tight-knit community with myself, then you know a lot about the 15-second talk show. I made pretty much daily for a solid month one video that I would post to the school story talking about anything, just a 15-second talk show. That's all it was. I talked about pancakes versus waffles. Are there more doors or wheels in the world? What's the best color? Underrated sports, you name it, I probably talked about it. And basically, that started getting me more of a larger social life. More people started to recognize who I was, and I was coming out of my shell more. I started being more sociable. I started talking to people more. However, I still wasn't quite comfortable with it yet. And because the way that I was going about this sort of popularity thing, it was through Snapchat, and it wasn't very a personal connection. So that's whenever a new type of depression started to form. It started to evolve. It started to adapt. Maharaga, but this depression started being, instead of anchored in loneliness and a lot of just, you suck, you're a horrible person, it's more of now, listen, yeah, you're more social, but what does that mean? Nobody cares. Nobody knows who you are. They know of you. They don't know you, though. They don't know who you are as a person. Does that matter? Does any of this matter? Does what you're doing matter? So that's whenever I started being really kind of, I don't know, depressed. I don't really know how to explain it, but I was out there, but I wasn't. I was putting myself out there, but I felt bad about doing it at the same time because these people don't know who I really am. So I slowly fizzled away at doing that because I wasn't feeling good while doing it anymore. At first it started out of passion. It started out of just, this seems like something fun to do in my free time. And then it devolved into something like that. And slowly I felt really bad about it. Real quick water break. You should drink water. You probably haven't been drinking your water. You should do this now. Good water. But all of this would very soon change. How soon? Well, a couple months later, in the middle of the second semester, my friend from before had managed to convince me to go to one of the after-school plays. Now, I had done nothing of that sort. I hadn't attended any of the football games out of any of my previous years. I'd never attended any after-school things. I wasn't in any clubs. This was a first time for me. And what's even more sad is that this was the first time I was hanging out with any friends, period. This was my junior year. At the end of it, this was really upsetting. This is really upsetting to think about. But, oh my, thank God she did. Had she not given me the ability, like, had not convinced me, that's what I'm trying to say. If she had not convinced me in order to go out to hang out with friends for the first time, I wouldn't have been opened to the reality of just how enjoyable that is. Because up until this point, all I had ever known was sitting at home, playing games, and watching YouTube all day. Very short-term pleasure and reward with the dopamine receptors up here, but in the long term, it's not that great. It doesn't feel that great. You don't feel very rewarding whenever you play Fortnite for 12 hours straight. I'm sorry, it just isn't as good as going out and hanging out with your friends for 2 hours. I hate to break it to you guys. And this started a spiral of chasing that high of friendship and companionship. This is whenever the cracks started to burst and the floodgates opened wide. I was suddenly hooked on hanging out with friends. Soon enough, summer rolled around, and it wasn't that much different from the summer of 2023. The summer of 2024 was a little bit better, but I still wasted a lot of my time. Now, I did hang out with my friends a couple of times. However, most of it was spent indoors. But more of my time was spent outdoors with friends, which is a lot more than I can say for my summer of 2023, which is progress. It's not a lot of progress in a full year, which you can do a lot in a year, but it's still progress. As summer came to a close, I had finally stumbled upon another rung to add into this ladder of growth, and that was fashion. So I ditched that old hoodie, got rid of the shorts, and I finally started to try and think about what I was wearing that day. Still had that bucket hair though. Oh yeah, I call this hairstyle the bucket hair. I don't really know what else to call it. I'm just basically wearing a bucket on my head. It does not look good. Do not ever have this hairstyle. And then senior year started, and boy did it start with a bang. Parties, homecoming, football games, you name it, I was there. There were so many different parties and different friend outings, and suddenly it felt like I was incorporating a whole lot more into the high school social life. At the end of junior year, I felt like I was finally making some progress. Whenever I had come into the start of senior year, all of a sudden it was like that. A ton of people suddenly were like, ah, yeah, I like that guy. And I'm not sure what it was. Maybe it was the way that I had behaved in my junior year. They had kind of built up an idea about me. And in senior year, whenever I finally had the urge and the ability to come out of my shell, that's whenever it kind of acted as the catalyst in order to have all of these people become my actual friend. Because I had a ton of people who I was generally close with that I suddenly became a lot closer with. And that opened up the gate for me to go to parties. And now these parties didn't have drugs or alcohol. This was literally just like regular high school parties, just dancing and music and pools and just a good time. Of course, there was party drama, as there always is, but you know, I was finally living a somewhat normal high school life. And with these parties and all of this stuff, naturally came all the dopamine with it. And with an excess amount of dopamine, typically comes some level of unhealthy habits. And oh boy, did they follow. You see, with all of this stuff, I tried to push myself into this community even more. I tried to become friends with everybody. I tried to be the popular guy. And this ended up with my friendship with the friend who I previously mentioned, who basically started my entire social career. That friendship kind of faded out. It didn't really go out with a bang. It just fizzled away. And I didn't really do anything about it. And I feel terrible to this day that I let that happen, that I let a friend who was so close fizzle away like that. However, that's not where that ends. I'll get to that in a minute, but that's not where that ends. Hey, editor me here. I kind of forgot to mention something pretty crucial here. So basically, I had managed to rekindle my friendship with my friend. Now, this was not something that I had initiated. She had basically ghosted me, if you will. She had basically given me signs that she wasn't doing okay, and I didn't listen. I was too scared to initiate, and she eventually initiated the conversation with me and basically called me out for me being scummy because I had basically and effectively left her out high to dry, and I realize now that that was completely wrong, and I still regret what I did to this day, but thankfully, very thankfully, she was able to understand and she was able to forgive me, and we managed to become friends again, and I'm happy to say that we are still friends and are still regularly talking to this day. So I just wanted to say that because I forgot to mention that while recording before, so you can go back to that now. Basically, I had driven myself in endless circles, trying to chase something that felt just there, so near, but yet always out of reach. I couldn't quite grasp it. Firmly grasp it. I tried, but I couldn't. Basically, that ended up sending me into depression number 3. This one was very similar to depression number 2. However, it was kind of an in-between between the first and the second. It was now all of a sudden, I'm a dirtbag, and on top of that, all of my friends, all of my friends are very shallow. So instead of people know who I am, but don't know me, it's all of a sudden my friends are really shallow, and on top of that, nobody knows who, that's the wrong thing. On top of that, I don't feel like the greatest person anymore. Oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry. So I had felt less alone. That fixed the alone problem, but there were still quite some problems with the way I was living. And then Instagram hit me with the bombshell, the bro reels. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with these, but at the time, I was getting reels of like, whenever you going through tough times, but bro is there to help you out, or whenever you're going to the gym and bro is there to spot you, and it's like bro and bro and bro, and it's like building up this idea of a homie who is always there, and it's just like, no matter what you're going through, you always know that this guy is there, and you can count on this guy to have your back. I didn't have that, and I felt so bad. I felt so alone. I felt like, man, I want a bro. And fortunately, my prayers were answered because along came Trace. Trace, if you're watching this, which I'm pretty sure you are, thank you, man. Honestly, you're without a doubt easily my best friend that I currently have. Honestly, thank you so much for everything that you have been doing for me and everything that you have been doing alongside me. Honestly, one of the greatest friends that I could have asked for, and I'm excited that we get to be friends, you know. I don't know if that was corny or not, but I don't know. I don't care, man. Friendship is cool. I'd die. And with that, I had stopped going to parties. My extravagant social life that I once had was suddenly behind me. I wasn't going to parties. I wasn't doing the 15-second talk show anymore. I had left that very popular life behind. And that was the trap that I had fallen into. I had fallen into the trap of, oh, you go for popularity, but you don't have your close friends. And then Trace came along and fixed that. Still, thank you for that. That was probably the best thing that I needed in that moment. So with my newfound appreciation for the magic of friendship, ooh, along came semester 2 of my senior year. And this was truly the peak of high school. I started spending more quality time with my friends. I started going out more. I started being more open. I started attending clubs. I was part of art club, of chess club. I was tutoring people every day after school. I was working out more often. I was finally living the life that I had so longed to live all these years ago. I say all these years ago, it was a year and a half ago at this point. Even though I was going to the gym semi-infrequently, I still had managed to build a physique that I am still to this day somewhat proud of. Now, I know it's not perfect and there's still room to grow, but I was finally proud whenever I looked in the mirror. I was able to look at myself in the mirror and realize, hey, I like what I see. And on top of that, my hair, my bucket hair was finally gone. That stupid hair was finally out of here. And this baby was in. I started pouring more passion into my passion of filmmaking. I said the same thing twice, good job me. And I found myself living for myself, living for the sake of living, instead of just living for the sake of feeling good, if you will. I don't really know what I was living for. I guess I wasn't really living for anything before. But now I had a reason. I had drive, I had purpose, I had reason to keep going. I had found my calling with filmmaking and with YouTube, and I was pushing for it every single day. And I felt great. And then, right as soon as everything got amazing, that's whenever my family life started to hit the fan. I'm not going to go into depth too much about it because, quite frankly, we all know way too much about each other on the internet. This is the internet. You don't need to know everything about my personal life. But my family life wasn't the greatest, and everything blew up. And it was at this moment where that year and a half of work that I had put in to garner all of my friendships that I had and get as close and as deep of a connection with these people that I had gotten came into play. Because it was at this time, at the end of my senior year, where everything was going wrong, but I had people that I knew I could lean on and that I knew I could talk with. I could vent my frustrations to them and I could ask them for advice, and they were there. And that is something that I'm so thankful that I was able to have. And had I not made that decision on the 13th of July, 2023, to take that first step towards getting better at myself and at my social life, then I wouldn't have had those friends. And Lord only knows what would have happened had I not bettered myself to the point where I was whenever everything hit the fan. Because if I was in the state that I was in 2023, whenever everything that happened had happened, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know if I would have done something rash. I don't know what would have happened or what would have become of myself. But I know it wouldn't have been great. But thankfully, oh so thankfully, was I able to have friends through the whole process. It all comes to a close whenever my name was called up for graduation, and the name that was just completely unknown 2 years prior was suddenly a name that was cheered by at least half of the crowd of the students sat there in the audience watching as I walked across that stage. And had you told myself from 2 years prior that that would have been your future, I would have laughed you out of the room, because at that time, I had in no way envisioned myself as being the person who was able to have more than a couple friends. Because suddenly, I had more than a dozen, and a fair handful of them are very close, who I am able to talk with on a regular basis and be comfortable around. And I'm so thankful that I'm able to have them. And I still think it's crazy, because just to show how absolutely of a shut-in I was throughout the first 2 years of high school, I had a solid half a dozen people throughout my senior year walk up to me and ask me, "Did you go here all 4 years of high school? Were you at this school?" And I was. I went to that school all 4 years, and I actually remember being in all of their classes. However, none of them remembered me. They didn't remember who I was because I didn't make myself known. I never stood out. I never did anything. I never really even spoke up. So, naturally, I was forgotten. I feel like other people started to notice that I was living a more fulfilling life than I was at the start of the year, because as the year progressed, several people made comments about how they were noticing how differently I was acting and how much I was changing and how much I was growing, and I felt good that people were recognizing my efforts and what I was going through. It felt nice to be recognized for what I was doing. And it's so heartwarming to realize that just how far away I started, I was able to come to a point where I can hold a conversation and I can go up to strangers and ask them if they are willing to trade a penny for something. I wouldn't have been able to do that 2 years ago. I wouldn't have been able to do that 1 year ago. And to think that that is the state that I'm currently in, that I'm able to sit here in front of a camera and confidently talk about this stuff, it feels good. It feels really good. Sorry about this self-glaze. It's probably really awkward, but I don't know. Motivational story, tax write-off, I don't know. Write it off as something. And another thing that I have come to realize is that I wasn't shut out by people. I had shut myself out. By refusing to present myself in a likable manner, by refusing to know how to communicate, by not doing anything that a normal person would do in any social situation, I had effectively shut myself out. And whenever I had shut myself out, I kept myself in instead of putting myself back out into the world, until one day my friend had taken me out of my shell and taught me that I can put myself out in the world. So, what's the moral of the story? Well, there are 3 of them. Moral number 1, I'm just a regular guy. If I can do this, anybody can do this. It doesn't take all the effort in the world to do this. It just takes effort. It takes some effort. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It does take some effort, but it does take time. It takes time, which comes up to my second moral. You need to show up. It doesn't matter how rough it gets. It doesn't matter what happens. You need to show up. It takes time to do stuff. You need to give yourself more time to do anything. Little tip for you guys out there who are trying to improve with anything: give yourself enough time to do it, because giving yourself too short a deadline produces an imperfect result. Now, obviously all of the results are going to be imperfect, but it makes it more imperfect. You get what I'm trying to say. And this comes to moral number 3. Friends are important. Very important. Oh my God. Thank you to all of my friends who are watching this. I cannot be doing this without you. And honestly, it means the world that I get to have so many people that I can call my friend, that I can look back on fondly and have so many good memories with. So if you have been a part of my life in any regard, thank you. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. But yeah, this just takes time. It takes time and effort and determination. It doesn't matter if it takes 1 month, 1 year, or 10 years. As long as you get to the end destination, it doesn't matter how long it takes. All that matters is that you show up and you don't stop. Well, that's the story. Really heartwarming, I hope. Unless it doesn't resonate with people at all and I completely misread the room. My bad, gang. But if you made it here, and you're not subscribed, hello? You should go click that button and interact with the video so that way more people can see this. That'd be great. I would love that. I would love to do this as my living, as my career, as my job, you know, so help out, go do that stuff. Also, shout out to my supporters on Patreon, Elias and Diana C. Y'all are cool. I hope you all enjoyed the story time. I know I did another story time yesterday. Now, don't get me wrong, not all the videos for the rest of July are just gonna be story times. Don't worry. I appreciate you guys who've been sticking along for the ride, and I will see you in tomorrow's video. Later! I'm so stupid.